Dr. Sharp, Mr. Wise, please report to the office. Now!
Welcome to another edition of From the Principal's Desk with Mr. Dennis Wilds and Dr. Chris Sharp.
Welcome back, everybody, to another edition From the Principal's Desk. This week, we're very privileged to have a special guest in the studio today. We've got Chuck Carter. He is the CTE director for Hamlin County Schools. I've known Chuck for a long, long time, dating back probably to early 90s.
Yeah.
Maybe late 80s.
Late 80s, probably. Yeah.
But Chuck has been, he and I have been intertwined over the years in education and in work life, and kind of wanted to get him in and talk to him about where we've had these discussions about culture building, leadership. Wanted to get his take on it. Want to check in on everybody. Dennis, how are you doing with everything that's going on?
Sharp, man, I'm doing great. We're healthy. We're blessed. So we're good to go. I've been looking forward to the getting together and doing another podcast just to have a little something to focus on.
Yeah, and it's kind of nice sometimes to decompress and maybe tell your problems. Maybe not out in public. We'll edit those out. But
yeah, I think if I've accomplished anything over this break, I've become a better rummy player. My son's learned how to play rummy, and he's wearing me out.
My son's wearing me out. He's playing Mario Maker, Super Mario Brothers. And he's like, Dad, try this. I'm like, I don't know how to play. I've got an Atari right behind me here.
There you go.
So let me give you a little bit of background. And Coach, tell me, and I'll refer to Mr. Carter as Coach all the time because I've known him as Coach forever. Just running down some of your accolades here. I mean, you're a Hall of Fame coach, state of Tennessee, right?
Correct.
That you were inducted 2 years ago?
Yes, in 2018.
Wow! So
they ran out of people on the list, and so they called me as an alternate and said, "Hey, if you fill in on this thing." So yeah, that was a nice honor.
And it's well deserved. Coach and I first met. He was when I was a wrestler. He was one of the founders of middle school wrestling back in the 80s. So we've known each other since then. And in fact, you were the assistant coach when I was in high school.
Yeah. The year that we went to the state dual tournament.
Oh, no.
and the head coach, legendary coach from Morristown, God rest his soul, Coach Lou Hubin, he needed a wrestler to wrestle up 2 weight classes. And in this day and time, you could make that happen if you could just get somebody to weigh just within the certain amount that they needed to. So Dr. Sharp was called on to drink like 2 gallons of water to make weight to wrestle up like into the 189-pound class. And he didn't weigh 160 or 165 probably soaking wet. And he had those 2 gallons. He's wondering he didn't carry those onto the scales. But he actually made weight and then got sacrificed out on the mat.
Oh, that guy killed me. He didn't pin me, but he killed me.
Coach Hubin, I thought he was literally going to have a heart attack because that guy picked you up, and he looked like Dave. It was the true David and Goliath battle, except you didn't have your slingshot. So
no.
that's what got you.
Well, it was that double. I think I tried a double leg, and he got me from there. It's like there wasn't a chance in the world I was taking that kid down. I do remember vomiting after weigh-ins, though.
Water.
Yes. Well, let me move on because Coach has got so much. He's a former middle school teacher. You taught history. You've taught ELA.
Mm-hmm.
Did you teach any other subjects I'm not aware of?
1 semester math, and they realized that was definitely a mistake.
I could have told them that one.
Yeah, that was not my forte.
You founded youth sports organizations with Team Extreme, volleyball, wrestling.
Yes.
You've been a principal at an elementary level. It's been about 7 years at
Nine.
9 years. Wow.
I know, it flew by.
Yeah. Well, and now you've moved on to CTE director. And last year you were one of the finalists for the state supervisor of the year. So that was pretty, considering the amount of time, that's a pretty quick rise up the ladder there, Coach.
Well, it's been a good fit. I've really enjoyed what I'm doing. Be honest with you, I've enjoyed all of my positions that I've had in education. I've been blessed.
Well, I want to get into kind of your thoughts and on change and leadership and the principalship. And tell us a little bit about how you got into the principalship, how you decided to jump out of the classroom into a leadership role, what that was like, and kind of some of the struggles you may have had.
Well, and I'll share this with you, Chris. First, when I was in the classroom and I was coaching, I felt like I was really having a good impact, a positive impact on that group of students. And so I wanted to extend that and expand it so that what I was doing, I could share it. Because I'll tell you, and you all both probably know this, any good leader is sharing and encouraging others to become better leaders themselves. It's not about me. It's about what I can do to extend and expand that role into other people's lives so that they in turn can expand and enroll other people into leadership in positive ways. So when I made the move from a middle school teacher to an elementary school principal, I'd never worked in an elementary school. So that was a kind of an odd move because I didn't have that background in elementary. But when I did it, those were the best 9 years that I could have ever asked for at that period of time in my educational career. So when I went there to the elementary school, I was kind of caught off guard with all the terminology that's different in elementary school from middle school. So the teachers would be talking about DIBELS, and they talk about progress monitoring. They talked about specials, and they talked about all these other things. Self-contained, even for me, was a word that I wasn't real familiar with from my middle school background. Mm-hmm. So I had to go home and do a lot of studying at night to get caught up to speed so that I could actually have those conversations about the things that our teachers were talking about. But after I got into the role, like I said, those were probably 9 of the best years I could have ever asked for. And then from there, you're impacting a group of teachers. You have a small group of other school leaders in elementary school that you're close to and you're working with, and you're sharing and collaborating. So from there, I was like, I really think I'm doing some good things here. I'd like to extend it and expand it even more. So then when the central office position became open for career and technical education, I had zero background in career and technical education. Middle school teacher, elementary school principal. I never worked in a high school, and really, to be quite honest, didn't know a lot about what CTE and all these classes were in high school because I didn't take those courses when I was in high school. And as you kind of alluded to there, it's been this is my 3rd year. It's been a short 3 years, but I've thrown myself into it. I've embraced it, and I've come to a point where I really love this. And these have been 3 of the best years that I could have asked for in this portion of my educational career. So, and I don't think it was necessary that I had a background in CTE to be successful. And I don't think I had to have a background in elementary education to be successful. And I came into education kind of through a back door in middle school, and I was successful there, but it wasn't because I had a middle school teaching background. So I think some of the things we'll talk about today are the things that make us successful when we're doing the job that we're called to do.
2 things, Coach, that you've said that I've picked up on, so far. Number one, I think all 3 of us have one thing in common. Chris and I have talked about this before. We went straight from the classroom into a principalship as well. And that's a pretty big jump. I mean, you can go and get your degree in master's in educational leadership, and you can pass the state test to become an administrator, and it kind of gives you the knowledge. But until you're sitting in that seat on the other side of that desk, that's a big jump, because it was a very it was a great move. I love it. I love what I do. Me and Chris talk about that all the time. But it opened my eyes to a lot of things, because I started seeing things from the other side of the fence, And another thing you said that I really like is, as a leader, once you got into that leadership position, is that you placed a focus on any good leader builds others up. A lot of people, it's natural for them to, I can't let them outshine me, because they might take from me, or they might overshadow me, but that's not what a good leader does. A good leader builds others up, and you give credit to your team when credit's out there, and you take the blame when blame's out there.
That's it. Exactly.
That's what a good leader does. And the third thing you said, in the first 10 minutes, that I really like and I really appreciate, is that you just throw yourself into it. That's kind of what we did. When you come out of the classroom and you go do a principalship, hey, if I'm going to be successful at this thing, I just got to throw myself into it. I got to give it all I got. Soak up everything you can soak up, learn everything you can learn, and just throw yourself into it, because that's the only way, you're going to be successful as a school leader. You can't come in and halfway do this job.
Completely agree.
Good deal.
Well,
great points, Coach. I mean, we're 10 minutes into this. Some really good stuff there.
Thank you.
Well, and I'll add to this. When I jumped in, Chuck, I couldn't count how many times I called you or called Danny, and said, hey, I don't know what to do. There's no, I didn't take that class, on how to deal with, the cussing parent, or how to plunge the toilet. Fortunately, I already knew how to do that. But I mean, when you get into it, you have built my leadership. So when you say that, I always, I take that to heart, because you've been one of the people who has kind of built me up to be a leader. And I hope I'm an adequate or good enough leader for the school I'm in. But I want to, take a moment and say thank you for what you said and what you've done for me.
I appreciate that. That's what it's all about, paying it forward. It was done for me.
Right.
I had a coach and a former principal, and I owe both of those men. And I've told them both that, and please don't ever hesitate to tell people who got you where you are to do that very thing. Just thank them, and then I always give them credit for where I am today. So,
well, let's talk about when you made that transition, that jump into the Union Heights, because I don't want to rehash history, but Union Heights was having some issues when you got there. So here you are, fresh out of middle school. You don't have any elementary experience. Both Dennis and I can relate to that 100%. So here you are, fresh-faced, new principal. How do you establish goals? How do your prioritized list? How do you get there?
Okay. So, and Union Heights is a community school, strong community, a lot of investment and a lot of success over the years. Really had one principal for a long, long tenure, probably over 30 years. And so I think sometimes what happens after you've been somewhere for that long, and it doesn't always happen, but you can get a little complacent, maybe. Things are the way they are. This is the way we do it. This is my routine. This is my schedule type thing in your mind. And when that becomes the culture or the thought process, then everybody else around you is doing the same thing. Everything's good. This is the way we did it last year. It's the way we did it 5 years ago. This way we did it 10 years ago. And this is the way the people who trained me when I came in felt. They felt like this is just how we do things at Union Heights. And, obviously when you come in, it's a new set of eyes. I think one of the best things and best pieces of advice that I would always share is don't come into a situation and start tearing down fences and walls until you realize why they're there in the first place. We can come in here in my room and knock down a wall and realize afterwards that it was a weight bearing wall, and that
Right.
can cause some big problems. You've got to figure out why those walls are there, or why the fences are there first. Now, that's not saying that they don't need to come down necessarily, but you don't want to go in there and just jump in and start changing things until you realize what you're changing and why you're changing it. Having that why there. So when I got into the school first year, just tried to observe a lot, tried to learn a lot, tried to, like I said, embed myself in elementary education and what our goals were. And then setting those short-term and long-term goals became a real big part of our strategic plan, And I think some of the things we're going to talk about today with culture, I think that's one of the cornerstones. And we'll talk about that more. I won't want to get into that right now, but I think building a good, strong culture, which was based on my goal of what I saw, and then making sure that what I was seeing was what was the same thing that our teachers and staff saw. So building leadership there to say, hey, here's what I'm thinking. What do you see based on what I'm thinking, and getting that common goal there in mind. So I think that was probably some of the earliest things that I did. And of course, we did have a few teachers that retired soon after I got there. I don't think their vision was the same as mine. And dear friends, even to this day. But it was kind of it's that thing. This is the way we do things here, and it wasn't necessarily the way I was going to do things. And so they made that choice, and I fully supported them. But I definitely missed them because they had a lot of positives to bring to the table, and a lot of good connections with the community as well. So that was the early onset, was just coming in and getting an idea of where we want to go. You can't go on a trip if you don't have a map, and so you got to figure out where you're going first, and then you got to figure out the pathway to get there. So and there are different routes, and some of them are a little more bumpy, and a little more detours and stuff along the way. But you got to get that route figured out first, and then your destination, your route, and then you got to figure out what means. Are we going to fly? Are we going to take a boat? We're going to drive? We're going to walk? Whatever that may be.
Coach, that's one thing we've talked about over the last couple of shows. Several things you've mentioned. I mean, Dennis, one of his big things is temperature checks. And I don't know, Dennis, kind of clue Coach in on when you talk about temperature checks, what we talk about.
Yeah, he's describing a typical temperature check, what I think of. I mean, it's like you said, when you go into a new principalship, a new job like that, you don't go in tearing down walls. I mean, you have to take time to evaluate and observe and, learn about the school, learn the people. And that's part of taking a temperature check. When a kid's sick, Chris alluded that this school might have been having some issues when you were hired. When a kid's sick, they're having some issues. What do? They come to the office and we take their temperature. That tells us if they're sick or not. Well, if there's issues with your school, take the temperature. And that means just evaluating, observing, talking to people, different people around the school, because that helps you figure out, why are some of these walls up? Why are we doing some of the things we're doing? What's working? What's not working? What do they support? What do they not support? What are some things they would like to see? That also helps you identify possible leaders in your school, people who might be more resistant to change. That's just part of taking a temperature check. That's that big part of evaluating your culture. So, just like Coach said, what we need to do, what direction do we need to go? Do we need to run? Do we need to drive? Do we need to, what do we need to do? That helps you start to prioritize and develop a plan. So he's all over it.
Oh yeah. Well, and we've also talked about pacing change. It's like knowing the course. Where are we going? How are we going to get there? I use it as a analogy to racing. You got to know the course so you don't take a wrong turn. Nothing like going 10 miles on a bicycle out where you're not supposed to be. Makes for a long day. But I mean, I think that's a great way of putting it, especially with tearing down walls. I hadn't thought of that. That's a great analogy. I'm going to steal that. I'm just telling you, Chuck.
We've
No
discussed,
copyrights.
yeah, and we've discussed this, Sharp. There's no stealing in education.
That's right.
It's just borrowing it.
Hey, Andy Warhol was quoted: "Good artists create, great artists steal." That's so
There you go.
from the master himself. There you go.
There you go.
So, Coach, you've kind of touched on this. You kind of got an idea of where your school needs to go. You got some staff members who are retiring. How did you lead that change when you started really getting into it? Because I know, and test scores were becoming a big thing at that point. We were really starting to look. That was in the No Child Left Behind days.
Mm-hmm.
We were really looking at. In fact, you and I looked at scores at some point over that time.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, woo, that's a lot. That's a lot of data. But talk to us about how you led. Let's say it's test scores or it's discipline. How did you lead that change in your school?
Well, guys, I tell you, and you all know this, I'm sure, but the best example is what you display yourself. And so I was always the first person in the building. More than likely, one of the last people to leave the building. If there was a spill in the cafeteria, I had the mop. I need somebody down here to clean this up. If there was a classroom that needed help, I was in the classroom. And I'm not bragging on me, but I just think I like to think of it as servant leadership.
Mm-hmm.
If people see you jumping in and doing what needs to be done instead of, hey, somebody needs to do this, who's going to do it? You're the one doing it. It kind of builds a respect. It builds kind of a mentality that, he's here with us. He's in it with us. So I think anybody that's going to expect to be really successful, you got to be willing to sacrifice. You got to be really willing to get in there and just do it. Roll your sleeves up. I can think of days when I got really chided about it, but the students would come up to the window in the dishwashing room, and I was in there with the apron on washing dishes because they were down somebody in the cafeteria and they couldn't get a sub in. So I was in there washing dishes. It doesn't matter what needs to be done. If we're going to be successful, the only way we'll get it done is if we all do what just needs to be done, not waiting on somebody else to do it. And so if anything, I think that was probably the way that I started my leadership. Was I was right there on the spot, very involved, hands-on, doing whatever needed to be done. So probably that.
It's funny you say that. You talk about the servant leader. I've got a quote. If you see me looking up to the right, I keep it on a board right beside my desk. I don't know if you've ever read the book The Carpenter by John Gordon.
Yeah, Gordon.
I've got a big quote right here on my board that says, titles mean nothing. The one with the servant's heart is the leader.
That's it.
So it doesn't matter what your title is. Having the title of principal doesn't make you the leader. That's a word that comes before your name, or that the word comes before your name or above your name on your school website. That doesn't necessarily make you the leader. The one, like you said, and Chris has wrote a blog, a really good blog. One of his first blogs is, about, Chris, you can jump in here with a title, but it's basically a mop fits everybody's hand.
Yeah,
it fits your hand just like it fits my hand.
They don't make no left-handed ones, do they?
No, they don't. It's amazing. Yeah, and that's one of my first ones, and I think that's an important. I got that from not only from my coaches growing up. My father, he ran a business, a small business, and he told me you got to be able to wear every hat. You can be the custodian, you can be the person who picks up parts, you can be the head electrician for his business, and I kind of took that as that's kind of my mantra moving on. just because I wear a shirt and tie to work doesn't mean I'm not too good to mop a floor.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm too good, what am I saying about the person whose job that is?
Exactly.
It's, you know, my custodians have as much, have my respect as much as my teachers do, as do my bus drivers, as everybody in that building. We're all adults, and we're all here for the same purpose. And regardless of what the title is, we're all here for kids. You know, even the people who are washing dishes in the back of the cafeteria.
You know, something that kind of cross references here and had kind of referred to it there. Dennis did when he was talking about leadership and the one who's the leader. In picking a captain and choosing a captain for your team, a lot of times coaches will make the mistake, and I say it's a mistake because they'll say, I'm going to let the kids vote on who the captain's going to be. Mm-hmm. The captain isn't the one that the kids pick. The captain is the captain. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. The captain is the leader that leads by example. And so I would not encourage coaches to have kids vote on who the captain is. I would let the captain rise. I wouldn't even pick a captain at the beginning of the season. I'd let them rise to the top. Mm-hmm. And then that's the captain. You know, you don't have to assign them. They are the ones who are doing it. It's the same thing in the principalship. I can get chosen to be the principal of Union Heights Elementary School. If I don't go in there and lead that school, then I'm just the title. Mm-hmm. And then other people are leading it, and factions are starting to come up, and some voices in the community, and central offices having to step in. I'm not the leader of that school. If I'm the leader, I'm gonna be the leader just by virtue of I'm a leader, and I step into it, and there's a job to be done. I'm going to do it.
Well, and I think what you're describing, you know, we could get into like leadership theory, great man, you know, situational leadership, servant leadership, but you're describing is building trust. Mm-hmm. You know, you've built confidence within your staff and the people, you know, at central office. Yes. They know, regardless of where you're at, you're going to be an effective leader. Dennis and I talked last week. We were talking about, you know, sometimes we're talking about building your leadership teams. I call them a tribe. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not always the star player that you want. You know, a lot of times those captains are the guy who's the best at, you know, handling the ball or got the most pins. That's not the person that's necessarily the best leader.
True.
Just like a coach, you know, best players who are the star athletes sometimes aren't the best coaches.
Yep.
Because they don't understand the struggles that other people have. And I think leadership's the same way. Mm-hmm. You know, Dennis and I have been very, you know, open about this. I was a good teacher. I won't say I was a phenomenal teacher, but I also understand the struggles that some of my teachers have, you know, when they are struggling in the classroom. I can relate to it because I've been there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would think one of my strongest skills as a teacher was relationship building, mm-hmm. whether that was with students or with coworkers or across the table with other schools and reaching out like that. So I think that was probably one of my strengths that led me to be a better leader in elementary school, and in this position was relationship building.
Yeah, that was one of our topics of discussion just a week or two, a podcast or two ago, you know, relationships. And we talked about, you know, you've got three types of teachers. You've got, you know, teacher number one, they are a genius. They know their content, you know, inside and out, but they don't have any relationship building skills. They're never going to get the most out of those kids. Then you've got teacher number two, which was Chris and I. We felt like we fell into this column. We knew our content well enough to teach it, but we weren't geniuses at it. You know, we weren't Einsteins, you know, but we could build relationships. You know, we knew how to relate to kids. We knew how to talk to kids. They respected us. So they worked hard for us. They, you know, they would run through a brick wall, you know, and that's how we kind of survived. Mm-hmm. But the goal is to be that third teacher, you know, the best of both worlds. Dig in there, learn your content, know it, you know, and study strategies on how to communicate it and teach it. You know, just really dig in there harder than we did, you know, but also focus on relationships, improve your relationship. Because if you can do both of those, your success and the student success is going to be off the charts. So, that was a big focus for us a few weeks ago. I'm sorry.
Very good.
Well, Coach, let me shift gears a little bit, because we've talked about, your successes. We've talked about your strengths. Tell me about some of the struggles that you've had in leadership. And I'm not just, principalship, into central office. Where have you had the most struggle? What are the things, advice you would give? Hey, don't do this.
Yeah.
Things like that.
And I think I'll take this to the school level when I became principal. You got to be careful that you don't overload your plate. I'm really bad at saying no.
Yes, you are. Because you're on here today.
But you go into a new school and you're like, oh man, we need to do this, we need to do this, we need to do this, and the next thing you know, your teachers are running around trying to keep up, and you're not realizing, wow, they got life outside of school. I do too, but I'm like I said earlier, throwing myself into this thing, and I'm expecting everybody to follow along. You got to make sure that if you're going to a destination, everybody's ready to go in the same direction. So I probably put a little too much effort into doing so many things, and that's part of my leadership style. I think I see the good in everything, and I think, man, this is a great idea. Oh, but that's a great idea. So I think you got to be careful that you don't overload. Would probably be my first piece of advice.
Yeah, and I don't know if you're like me or if I can relate a lot to what you're saying. And then another problem, I compound that because whatever I see, if I like that, I want it done now.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm impulsive. Not only, I'm a little impulsive. That's a weakness that I have as well. If I have to go to an interview and they say, what's your strengths? I give them strengths. And they say, what's your weaknesses? I'm impulsive.
Yeah.
I see something and I like it. I want to do it. I want to do it right then. And that's not the best strategy a lot, because you've got to communicate that why, and because everybody is not going to buy in like you buy in.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have to communicate that why and get everybody on board first. That takes time.
Yes, it does.
Well, and I'm going to tell on you a little bit, Coach. You're probably one of the most high energy guys I know, so you're like the Energizer Bunny. You just keep going and going. And, you're probably a little bit like me. I would say if in a different time, I would have been diagnosed with ADHD.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And, organization for me is a struggle. Planning sometimes is a struggle, because I see, just like you, hey, that's a great idea. I want to, let's do this.
Yeah.
Let's do this. And by the time you get done, the day's over and you got 5 new things you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And where do you go?
Yeah.
So you have to pull the reins back. And I still to this day struggle with it sometimes. So let's kind of shift gears a little bit to culture building. Okay. Because cultures, you talked a little bit about the school. And you had a community school with a strong tie, a principal that been there a long time. Talk to us about how you established the culture that the Chuck Carter culture that you had at Union Heights, because there was a culture shift. Even from where I was at, I knew about it. Not, kids talk, and I've got kids that went to Union Heights that are next door, and they still love Coach Carter.
And I would just start that conversation with a little story. I had a friend, and he was applying or he had received a job as a principal in a school, and that school had struggled somewhat. And he went in for evaluation meeting with some of the director schools and a few other people from that team, and they started talking to him about test scores. And he told them, it was his first year, and that he had made a real effort at building the culture of the school. He thought he needed to work on the culture. And they said, well, we like the culture, but what are you going to do about these test scores? And that always stuck with me because I don't think one will happen without the other first. If you don't go in and establish a culture of what you feel is important and getting others to believe that that's important, and then they are on that same page, you're all going to kind of be working in a different direction. So I don't think there's probably anything more important than the culture of a business, a school, or an organization. I think the culture, and I have got to be the one that kind of establishes that culture, because I've been put in that position to establish the direction that we're going, which is in essence our culture. So I put a lot of effort in 2 or 3 things. I think one of the keys to a successful culture is a community. So I felt like I had to prove that the input of the teachers, the input of the parents, the input of the students, and then people just in our community, those were all important to me, so that it isn't just the Chuck thing. It was, we're in this thing together, and what you have to say, I value that. We may not be able to do it. We may decide to go a different direction in the end, but I value your thoughts and your opinions, because that's very critical. And then the other part of that, and we've talked a little bit about that, is that I'm here to do whatever I need to do, and I just want you to do the same thing. You know, that culture of there's failure is not an option. Great book kind of talks about that space crew that was up there, and they were what is it, Apollo 11, I believe, and they were stuck out in space, and they got together there in the war room down in Houston, and they said, failure's not an option. We got to bring these guys home, and here's what we've got. What do we got to do to get them here? And they came up with a plan. Same thing. Our students are our job to make sure that we give them every opportunity to be successful. So failure wasn't an option. So I had to get that mentality in place, that I'm not going to let a kid fail, and you're not going to let a kid fail. Don't come to me with a problem. Come to me with a situation, but have 2 or 3 optional solutions in hand, and then let's figure out which one of those we want to go with. But don't come to me and say, here's my problem, now fix it. No, come to me and say, can we work on this together? So that this isn't, failure is not an option. We're going to figure something out. We'll do it together. And then the other one of the community. I think once you get those 2 in place, then you can start shooting out goals and start reaching them.
Yeah, a couple key points that I just picked up there on. I think he's either been reading our blogs, Chris, or he's writing them for us. I don't know which one here, because
I told you I steal all his ideas.
Yeah, we're right along the same lines. You know, number one, culture trumps everything. You know, that when we started this whole blog site, that was my first 10 episodes, and my first 10 blogs was just about culture and how it trumps everything. Because if you don't have a strong culture, then, you know, once you establish a strong culture, everything else falls into place.
That's it. Absolutely, Dennis.
You know, and then the next thing you talked about, without saying the exact word, but you set expectations.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you did that by presenting yourself, putting yourself out on the front lines, but you did express expectations of what you expected and what you wanted. And then I really like, you know, we say it all the time. In our last podcast, I think Chris and I talked about criticism. You know, if you want to come to me and criticize something, that's fine. I've got pretty thick skin. I've learned to listen. I don't get emotional. You know, I don't let my emotions play into it. I listen. You know, but if you're going to come to me with that, bring a solution with it.
There you go.
You know, if you want to come and complain about something, or you want to come point something out or criticize something, I'm perfectly fine with that, because that's how we figure out things are wrong.
Yeah.
But come with a solution. Don't just come and dump and leave. You know, be part of the solution as well. So I really like those 3 key points. You know, are very crucial there.
You know, one of the things that you just said is very important, and I love what you said, is we got to be willing to understand that we don't have all the answers. and we're not perfect. There's none of us that are perfect. And so when we set ourselves up that, oh man, we're going to look bad if we admit we were wrong, or we don't accept some kind of constructive criticism, hopefully. But if we don't accept those things, then we're setting ourselves out there as we can't mess up, we can't be wrong, we can't fail. And that is the complete recipe for failure, is when you get there.
Well,
Sure.
I think right now is a perfect example of what we're going through right now in education is a perfect example of not being afraid to say, I don't know. I don't
Right.
have the answer right now.
Right.
Because we've talked about, building the ship as you're flying it. That's what we're doing right now is, and I've had to look at parents and tell them, listen, I don't have the answers now, but I'll have them. Just give me some time and we'll come up with something. And I think that,
Oh, that's a great answer. I mean, instead of buffaloing and trying to make it look like the answers, that's the worst thing you can do. I think people respect that.
well,
That's how
they
you
know
lose
that,
credibility.
yeah.
Yes.
And they respect the fact that you're going to take time to consider what your decision is going. It's not a knee jerk.
Right. Right.
So, Coach, you've talked about how that happens inside of school. You're in a bit different situation now. I mean, you've got businesses you're working with. You got high school students at two what I would consider large high schools. How are you building culture between, your CTE staff, the industry, and your students you have now? Because that's got to look a lot different.
No, to be quite honest with you, it's almost the same. I think a coach was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, being a coach first, because everything that I did in coaching transfers over into the classroom, transfers over into being a principal, and now it transfers over into being a CT supervisor or a director of career and technical education or whatever role, because the key to a successful coach is that you are an encourager. I think the word teacher could be changed or interchanged with the word encourager, and I think it would fit very well. And I think the same thing for my role as a principal. I think what you do is you're encouraging people to do their best, and you're encouraging students to do their best. So I think what I try to do every day, I do a weekly, it's called the Monday Mojo. I started it when I was a principal, and I start out every week's mojo with a positive, bragging on something that when I was a principal, something at a grade level that I saw, or some students did something, or an award that somebody had gotten. But then I go through the week of what we've got in front of us and what's coming up and where I need some help and where people might want to check into something for professional development or whatever. Did that at the school level. So I just took that with me to to this level, and the Monday Mojo goes out every week. It's something that I do not miss. It's if I have to do it at midnight on Sunday, it's going to be done. And I've gotten to a habit of I build that during the week, so that when I sit down on Friday or Saturday to do the Mojo, I've already pretty much built it. I've just got to fine tune it and finish it up. But that's become the expectation, that they know that's coming, so they can count on me. They know that it's going to have pertinent information. It's just going to have a bunch of fluff or a bunch of just stuff in it. It's only going to be what they need. And then during the week, they don't have to worry about getting email, because they're getting those from their principal. They're getting those from other teachers. They've got so many different directions to be pulled with a technology like that. So communication is paramount. So, but the communication, if it's only being sent out, but it's not being received, is not communication. That's just you just shouting. You're just talking and nobody's hearing you. So I think communication is key. I think there again, throwing yourself into it and being available and getting what needs to be done, taken care of, and then building that same culture. There again, we do a lot of things together. Got everybody shirts, so that we could said Hamlin CTE. It wasn't East CTE and West CTE. It was Hamlin CTE because we share students between the two high schools for our career and technical education programs. It's about having a beginning of the year and an end of the year, and we had a thing at Christmas. We get together, all of us as a group, just building that collegiality, I guess, is, if that is the word, but building that culture that we're in this thing together. None of us is more than the least of us in that matter as well. So there you go.
Good
Coach,
stuff.
That I would have. I mean, you simplified it to almost an art form right there. I mean, the words of wisdom. The fact of communication, clear, concise, and not overwhelming. I think
No.
Because I think that's one thing we do as educators. We, data overload.
Yes.
How many times has somebody called me and said, "Hey, did you read that email I sent you?" I'm like, I don't know if I did or not.
I may have.
Possibly. It didn't stand out, obviously. But, just kind of controlling how much you're communicating. And I don't want to say controlling like I'm keeping it away, but kind of giving it out in doses. This is what we need to know now. Here's the immediate. Here's the long term. I think that's important.
If you're a school leader and you're sending something out every single day, got to get this done, got to do this, now there's some things that are just going to be time sensitive that you have no control over. But if you're communicating, you got to make sure that it's done consistent. Mm-hmm. And I think having that weekly memo that's not just going everywhere is a good way to do that. Because otherwise you just got to think about what everybody else has coming, even from us. If we continually get something from the director of schools or from a certain level at central office, it's kind of like, did you get my email? Which one? You sent me 10 in the last 2 days. Mm-hmm. It's information overload, because then you get the parent phone call, you get the kid vomiting down the hall, and that email just gets kind of tucked away there, and you might remember to go back to it, you might not. So I think you got to be very conscious of what's going on. From your point of view, what you're sending out is the most important thing that could be out there. There's nothing else more important. From that classroom teacher standpoint, the most important thing are those 25 kids sitting in front of them. Your email may be very, very important, but if you're constantly bombarding me with email, I can't get done what I've got to get done in front of those kids. So trying to be real conscious of others as well. I think.
All right, Coach. I want to kind of get into some of what you've been doing outside of school. I know you're doing a blog. Why don't you tell the people that are listening a little bit about your blog and how that relates to your leadership? I know it deals with faith, so explain that for them.
Yeah, I would definitely say it's connected to my faith and in something bigger than myself. I think. Back around 2012 or so, a lot of things went on in my life, my family. We won't go into all those details, but during that time, I had read a book about the zigzag principle. And basically it said, anything you do in life, a downhill skier doesn't just ski downhill. They zig to the one side, and they zag back across, and they do a cutting pattern rather than just going straight down the hill. And the whole thought of that was, whatever you're doing in life, you're not just going to go straight to that. You're going to go a different route, and it's back and forth to get there many times. And so one of the things that it's Christensen, I believe, is the author's name. One of the things he says to do is when you're trying to figure out what's next, he said, look in your pockets and see what you got. And he said he wasn't talking about money. He's like, check it out and see what you really got that you're good at that isn't money, and what can you do to build off of that in your career. And so when I was at that point, I looked in my pockets and I kept coming back to coaching. Mm-hmm. I said, I'm gonna use that to make an impact on other people's lives more than I ever have. And so that's when I started the extreme team wrestling, and then from there extreme team volleyball. And during that same time, I had from the from about 2012 to 2015, I had like 13 flat tires, literal flat tires, little shards of metal, big long nails. Just, I mean, and I don't think that's common. Have you
No,
had
it sounds like you're riding through a junkyard.
exactly, exactly? But it was so odd. And one day I was driving home from church, and I said, you know, the sermon was about an aha moment, and my aha light just went on in my head, and I was like, God didn't give me these flat tires for no reason. He actually said, you know, having a flat tire means you're on the side of the road. So are you going to stay on the side of the road, or are you going to fix the flat tire and get back on the highway? And so I sat down and wrote a book on how to fix a flat tire. And in that, all the tools that you use to fix flat tires, there's tools that you use to fix the flat tires in your life when you're on the side of the road.
Wow.
And so perseverance, grit, sacrifice, humility, there's a faith, all those tools are what get you back on the road. And so from that, the blog of Flat Tire Ministries was created. And so I think I'm going on right about 3 years now that I've done a blog each week, Flat Tire Ministry blog for 3 years now.
Wow.
And it's all about giving you something to think about to make you a better person. And I've tried to always keep that theme of self-reflection and then share it out. And it's all to help build you up and to make you a better leader, better mother, father, coach, husband, wife, whatever it might be, whatever that role is. It's to be a positive influence in your life. So Flat Tire Ministries, check it out. You can find it on Facebook. I do it through Twitter, LinkedIn, and then I do it to I send it as a link in my Monday Mojo as well, and it's voluntary.
Right.
I always make that clear that you don't have to read this, but I think it's if nothing else, it's helped me. I know.
Well, and that's, I started mine back in January after talking with Dennis. And when you read ours, we have similar ideas, two different perspectives. Mine's, I use endurance sports as a vehicle, because I find it, again, it's based on faith. It's based on grit. It's based on, building. I use the term building your toolkit.
Yep.
You've got to be prepared when times come. And I've read your the Flat Tire Ministry several times. In fact, normally they come out on Sunday, don't they?
Yes.
Yeah, when they drop on Sunday, I normally try to check that out and
Thank you.
Get a little encouraging word from Coach Carter.
I get a little wordy at times, I was just say, but I figure I'm going to write what the Lord gives me to write, and I'm not going to limit it, and I'm not going to try to make it fit a certain box. I'm just going to write what the Lord gives me, and when I'm done, I'm done. So,
hey, I always look at it. People can always stop reading.
Exactly.
It's like, I'm going to give you more.
Exactly.
Mine's had a couple poop jokes in it. But it's what it is.
That's what it is.
So, hey, just out of curiosity, you said you got that book. Are you shopping it around? What's the status on that book?
Oh no, I've not got it published. I've got it sitting there finished. So I've got to take some of my own advice and get it the last step to publication. But I've done a couple other things after that. I did a little funny book, and I'll share some of the pictures sometime with you. But we've got it ready to be published as well. The illustrator myself, but it's called 101 Better Uses for a Necktie.
Do you remember? I did a couple drawings initially.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Gabe Hutchings. I shared them with him. Jennifer Hutchings is a librarian at Union Heights, and Gabe was her husband. She was telling me he was an artist. And so I kind of talked to him about it, and he took them. And I mean, he just busted them out. And they're all themed. Mm-hmm. And so, we're trying to figure out how we want to go about getting that published. But it's a fun little book, but it's also meant to do a little self-reflection about
Sure.
taking things so serious in life, and sometimes it's a good idea to take that necktie off, and
You know, I get I've had people ask me over the years, every day I wear a necktie. And they'll ask, even the superintendent has joked, why do you always have that tie on? Even, principals meeting, things like that. And a lot of them think it's because of, being in Hamlin County. That was the expectation for principals.
yeah.
The reality is, when my dad was working in a factory, he was a maintenance supervisor years ago, back in the 70s. They made him wear a necktie. And he said, it's dangerous. Why, if it gets caught in a motor or it gets in a chain, it could break my neck. And their explanation is you need to wear the necktie so the fork truck drivers don't run you over. So, and I kind of took that a little bit to heart, as in, you do have to kind of look.
Oh yeah. Oh
look
yeah.
the part,
Yep.
look like you.
Yep.
Even though you might not know what you're doing every day, look like you're somebody. Look the part, what they expect.
That professionalism of the expectations. There we talked about expectations a lot. I think that was one of my reasons, and why I still wear a necktie to work every day today is I'm coming to work.
Right.
So if I'm going to play, I want to have a pair of khaki shorts on, some flip flops, and a t-shirt. And I'm going to play.
Right.
But when I go to work, I'm going in what I wear to work, and that's what I work in. So I think you can get your work done in a polo or anything like that. I think there's not a problem with that. But for me, and like you said, I'm just setting the expectation of this is what I do when I go to work.
Yeah. Well, to use a wrestling term, when you go onto the mat, you got to fasten your headgear.
That's it.
Before you step on the mat, it's got to be fastened.
You got to tighten up that tie before you go into that meeting.
That's right. And make sure you look good.
That's it.
So, Coach, one of the last things we like to do here is we always try to help out our listeners with a good book suggestion.
Oh, wow.
Could you suggest to our listeners maybe an influential book, a book that kind of you would suggest any leader to read?
Yeah, actually, I can think of a couple. One is a pretty obvious one, Mindset, Dr. Carol Dweck. I think that is a great book for anyone in any capacity, parents, coaches, teachers, principals. I'm trying to think of the other title. The book is a biography on a Marine. His name was Chesty Puller, but I cannot think of the actual name of that book. I'll get it to you. Okay. But the thing about Puller was he was a Marine's Marine, but he was a leader. And I'll give you an example of one of the things, and I've used this in my school. That failure's not an option. Puller was a leader of the Marines, a general during on up in his career during the Korean War. They were in North Korea, and he came to his men and he said, "Guys, we've been looking for our enemy for weeks now." He said, "We've got intel, and our enemy is to the north, and they're located to the south. They're located to the west, and they're located to our east. They can't get away from us now."
It's all about how you turn a phrase, right?
Exactly. I mean, that was awesome. To me, I was like, that's my guy right there. Others would have been, hey, we're doomed. He was like, heck, fire, they can't get away from us now. We can go any direction we want to.
We've actually, a couple of the books we've used have been Marine, written by Marines. It's kind of odd that you choose that one. I've read the Dave Goggins book recently, and little stiff in language, but good read. Good follow on Twitter. Not safe for work though. He uses
that book is called Marine: The Life of Chesty Puller. and it's kind of odd because when Marines go to bed at night, and I don't know this, I'm not a Marine, but it's been said that a lot of them say goodnight, Chesty, because he's such a legendary part of the Marine Corps. And I really admired him. He would do things like he'd go into a chow hall, and a lieutenant would walk up and get in front of the unenlisted man. Pull her to go up there and get him and say, because he'd be back in the back of the line, waiting in line like everybody else. He'd go up and get that lieutenant and say, get back there in the back of the line. You know, you're no better than anybody else in this line. You know? And
those are, as we've said, that's a great lesson for any leader. Coach, I've had so much fun today. I want to thank you again for, taking your time out and coming, just catching up a little bit.
Oh gosh, been my pleasure. Certainly. I look forward to tuning in more and hearing some of your all's other ones and checking them out and going forward with you.
Well, definitely. Please make sure if you follow Coach on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, check out Flat Tire Ministries. It's a great read. It's a spiritually uplifting. And, as we said here, leadership is a calling. Despite what your faith is, I truly believe that being a leader is a calling.
Yes.
So, Coach, again, thank you for taking time out of your day.
Thank you for the opportunity.
I want to thank all the listeners out there, and for Chris and for Dennis, I want to say have a great week, stay safe, and stay sharp.